In the late 90s and early 2000s, Alienware made its name with the Area-51. That was its flagship PC with top-of-the-line components, excellent performance, and a unique look that made it stand out from the competition. Here in 2025, Alienware is still doing the same thing with the Area-51, and this is the new version. It's still a top-flight gaming PC with the best components, excellent performance, and a unique look, but it's also got quite a bit more. Today, we're going to put it through its paces, see how it performs, and decide whether this is the pre-built gaming PC for you. My name is Ben Funk, and you're watching Hot Hardware. Okay, now it's time to dive into the Alienware Area-51. Our review unit has an Intel Core Ultra 9 285K processor. That's 24 total cores, 8 performance cores, and 16 efficiency cores, with a 5.7 GHz max turbo frequency and 36 megabytes of Intel Smart Cache. It can take up to 250 watts to reach those top turbo speeds, so the 360mm closed-loop cooler inside the Area-51 could have its work cut out for it. The graphics card is a GeForce RTX 5090 with 32 gigabytes of GDDR7 memory, over 21,000 CUDA cores. It's just the fastest GPU on the planet right now, at least in terms of what's available for gaming. Our system also has 64 gigabytes of dual-channel DDR5 with an XMP profile that has it running at 6400 MHz. There's also a 2 terabyte NVMe M.2 PCI Express 4 solid-state drive, and Alienware wants us to know that there are also Gen 5 SSDs available. Powering it all is a 1500-watt platinum-rated ATX 12VO power supply. The case of the Area-51 is honestly pretty large. You can see it right here. It's 22 inches tall, 9.1 inches wide, and 24 inches deep, and it can weigh up to 76 pounds with all that hardware in there. But you can see that's for a good purpose. The front fans are 180mm, and there's a pair of them. There's also the 360mm closed-loop cooler at the top of the system, so there are 3 120mm fans blowing down, and there are a couple of fans next to the power supply blowing up. Alienware is really proud of its positive pressure cooling system in the Area-51. All of the fans are intakes, and air naturally exhausts out the back. Alienware says this means that the system can run up to 45% quieter during graphics-intensive tasks, even in a high-temperature environment, and simultaneously deliver 25% more airflow than any Alienware desktop launched in the last 3 years. So it's quieter and it moves more air. There is a big gap in the front between the front panel and the intake fans. Fans could be starved off in a solid front, and that's why mesh is pretty popular in a lot of other cases today. But Alienware made an opening that's 30mm wide for air intake. The company says it needs to be this wide, or else you can get unpleasant sounds or wind tunnel effect when the intake fans are blowing hard. On the rear of the Area-51, we can find 4 USB-C ports, 2 of which are Thunderbolt 4 and the other 2 are 10 gigabit USB 3.2. Below that are 5 USB 2 ports, 2 of which support quick charging, and a USB 3 5 gigabit port. Right next to that is 2.5 gigabit Ethernet, and then optical audio output, analog line input, and analog line output. The GeForce RTX 5090 in the Area-51 has 1 HDMI 2.1 port and 3 DisplayPort 1.4 ports, which support the 2160p 240Hz resolution and refresh rate of our test monitor. The Area-51 uses industry-standard components. Aside from standard DDR5 DIMMs and M.2 solid-state drives, that also means an ATX motherboard, very standard, and an ATX 12VO power supply. That means that down the road, if the power supply gives out, or if you want to upgrade the system, including a new platform with a new motherboard for the processor, they can just fit right into the Area-51 case. Now, that's a little less true for the RGB LEDs inside the Area-51. However, Alienware makes available an AlienFX board cable conversion kit for standard ATX motherboards for just $35, so you can still use the RGB LEDs in the system with a new motherboard if you want to. Of course, all of this performance and the careful thought put into the engineering doesn't come cheap. The Area-51 starts at $3,749. That's a configuration that has a GeForce RTX 5080, Our review unit, as it is today with the RTX 5090 and the Core Ultra 9, is $5,699. No doubt, that's a lot of money. But on the other hand, if you don't enjoy building PCs or you don't really want to, this does include the labor of putting the system together, the fastest hardware available, a really nice design, good cooling. And of course, that also includes a 1-year warranty that includes 24/7 hardware and software support, on-location repairs, and the Alienware Health Check dashboard. Alienware also sent over for us an AW3225QF. That's a 32-inch 4K monitor with a QD OLED display and a 240 Hz refresh rate. That's super fast, super smooth, and it pairs really nicely with the GeForce RTX 5090 and the Area-51. It has 2 RGB LED zones on the back of the monitor, which means you may not see them if it's facing a wall, but they're a nice touch. It features one DisplayPort 1.4 port, which supports the 3840 by 2160 resolution and 240 Hz refresh rate with display stream compression and HDR support. There's also 2 HDMI 2.1 ports and variable refresh. The monitor does support G-Sync compatibility. There's also a total of 3 USB 3.2 Gen 1, so 5 gigabit per second Type A ports, and 1 USB 3.2 Gen 1 Type C port. Alienware also provided the Pro keyboard and mouse. These white peripherals include 2.4 GHz wireless connectivity as well as wired connectivity, and the keyboard also supports RGB lighting. The keyboard is really nice with mechanical keys, and the mouse is pretty lightweight but still feels sturdy enough under our hands. By the way, everybody, if you like videos of high-end gaming PCs like this on really nice solid wood countertops, make sure to hit the subscribe button and like this video. Also hit the bell so that you're notified about more videos in the future. Alright, so now that we've taken a good look at the Area-51, it's time to see how it performs in a wide array of benchmarks. First up, let's run Browser Bench's speedometer. We run version 2.1 and 3.1. The older benchmark runs very fast, at nearly 700 runs per minute. Version 3.1 scores about where we would expect, at 40 runs per minute. Next up is the old standby Geekbench 6. As you can see here, it scores 3200 on the single core and 22,000 and change on the multi-core. And that's about normal for a Core Ultra 9 285K. And then finally is Geekbench AI. On the NPU, it hit about 9500 on the single precision data type, right at 10,000 on the half precision data type, and then quantized data at over 15,000. On the other hand, the GeForce RTX 5090 is super fast. Now the scores are more like 45,000 for single precision, almost 67,000 for half precision, and nearly 33,000 for the quantized score. The GPU is much faster, but of course is going to use more power in order to give this kind of performance. After that, it's time for some 3D Mark tests, starting with Steel Nomad. This is a DirectX 12 benchmark that doesn't use any ray tracing effects. This is purely a raster performance benchmark. And as you can see, it passes it with flying colors at 139 frames per second. On the other hand, 3D Mark's Port Royal is a ray tracing benchmark. And again, you can see that it does really well. In this graphics test, it hits nearly 160 frames per second, or a 3D Mark score that's over 34,000. And finally, we're going to get on to what the Area-51 is made for, gaming. We're going to start with Cyberpunk 2077. It's still one of the most intensive games that you can run that requires the most from the hardware. We're using the Ray Tracing Overdrive preset, but we're also going to change our frame generation to use DLSS with a 2x multiplier. And you can see that averaged out to 112 frames per second. So if you turn up DLSS multi-frame generation, you could actually really run this Alienware QD OLED monitor as hard as it can go. Earlier this year, Rockstar released Grand Theft Auto V Enhanced Edition. This is a free update to the game that adds advanced rendering techniques to this title, which dates all the way back to 2013. We used the built-in benchmark, but just the final scene to gauge performance. That one seems to require the most performance from the system. In the end, you can see that it runs at 4K with ray tracing effects turned on between 80 and 90 frames per second, dipping down into the high 70s toward the end of the scene. Monster Hunter Wilds is the latest in the long-running series from Capcom. You can get a benchmark utility on Steam before actually buying the game to see how it would run on your hardware. On the Area-51, we cranked the graphics settings to Ultra, enabled DLSS at the quality setting, and turned on frame generation, and ended up with an average of 160 frames per second. Portal with RTX gives a ray-traced makeover to a classic. While we love the original Portal, you don't really need ray tracing to enjoy it. On the other hand, it looks great. So we turned on ray tracing and we turned on DLSS 3 with frame generation and set all of the settings to the maximum and played the game at around 90 frames per second. It felt smooth, and standing next to a Portal doesn't really tank performance either. Marvel's Guardians of the Galaxy also supports ray tracing and DLSS. We turned the settings all the way up to the maximum and ran the built-in benchmark, and it ran at an average of 136 frames per second. Next up is Red Dead Redemption 2, which people uncharitably call Grand Theft Auto in the Old West. It's a little bit older, but it still looks fantastic, and it can work the hardware pretty hard. It doesn't support DLSS or frame generation or even ray tracing, but it does support reflex for low latency. We turned the quality preset up to the maximum and ran the built-in benchmark, and it averaged 148 frames per second. Next up is Gears 5. As you can see, we cranked the resolution to 4K and turned the settings up as high as they would go and ran the built-in benchmark, and the average frame rate was 148 frames per second. Next up is Black Myth Wukong, and this is similar to Monster Hunter Wilds in that Steam has a benchmark utility that you can just download and run before you actually buy the game to make sure that it will run well on your system. It is pretty punishing. We set the graphics quality to cinematic, which is the highest, and we set DLSS to 66, and the benchmark ran at an average of 138 frames per second. One of my favorite games over the last several years is 2018 Spider-Man. It did bring with it the PS5 remasters, ray-traced effects, reflections, and shadows. We upscaled to quality and turned all of the ray tracing effects to their maximum. Spider-Man Remastered run really well at 4K. We averaged around 110 frames per second most of the time, although you could see dips into the high 80s or low 90s. Power consumption in the Alienware Area-51 is about what you would expect considering its specifications. At idle, it consumes around 68 to 70 watts, and using Cyberpunk 2077 as a reference, we found that the Area-51 consumed around 760 watts under gaming load. Alright, now that we've put the Area-51 through its paces, what do we think? It is exactly what I said at the beginning. It's a top-flight gaming PC, it has the best components, and it has excellent performance. It also has a lot of other features, like industry standard form factor parts, including an ATX motherboard, an ATX 12VO power supply, and of course, storage and RAM that can be upgraded, just like any other gaming PC. It's also got lots of RGB lighting effects, really great cooling, and it's just really well built. It is pretty large, but those big fans require it. The base model of the Area-51 will set you back $3,749, $3,749. That's a lot of money, but the base model gets you quite a bit. That's a Core Ultra 7 processor. That is a GeForce RTX 5080, 32 gigabytes of memory, and 1 terabyte of storage. That's a pretty fast PC in its own right. And given how hard to come by the GeForce RTX 5000 series has been so far, it might actually be one of the more affordable ways to get a high-performance PC with one of those cards in it. Now, our test model will set you back $5,699. That's a big price tag to swallow. But it also gets you the Core Ultra 9 285K. It also gets you the GeForce RTX 5090, 64 gigabytes of fast memory, memory with an XMP profile, and 2 terabytes of storage. If you're not looking to build a PC, the Area-51 is a really great option. The cooling is excellent. The 360 millimeter cooler keeps temperatures under control. The GeForce RTX 5090 runs relatively quiet despite all of the power that it both consumes and it puts out in terms of performance. And the fan setup is really nice. You know, we talked about positive pressure. That actually works really, really well. It's relatively quiet under load. It's nearly silent at idle, and it keeps temperatures under control. That's the most important part. So is the Area-51 for you? Well, that depends. Are you looking to build a PC or buy one? If you're looking to build, first of all, right now in April of 2025, good luck finding a high-performance graphics card at retail price. They're pretty scarce right now, and so if you're looking to get a GeForce RTX 5090, something like the Area-51 might be your best bet. We really like what the Area-51 brings to the table because it uses industry-standard components, which, yes, let's be honest, that's been true of a lot of Alienware's competition. Main Gear, Falcon Northwest, boutique builders have not done proprietary parts. And so this is really Alienware kind of catching up, but it's really nice. The case layout is great. ATX motherboard is very standard. The ATX 12VO is a new standard of power supply. If the power supply dies out of warranty, or if you want to upgrade the PC down the road, it's pretty easy to do. Alienware makes available a wiring harness that lets you use the RGB lighting through Alienware Control Center, along with a regular standard ATX board years from now when it's time to refresh your hardware. So that about wraps it up for the Alienware Area-51. I've been Ben, you've been awesome, this has been Alienware, and we'll see you next time.